Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Harrisburg City Council Work Session. Today is April 21st, 2020, and I'm calling this meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. Mr. Petrosky, please do the roll call.
Mr. Allett,
Present.
Ms. Bowers,
Present.
Ms. Daniels,
Here.
Ms. Green,
Present.
Mr. Madsen,
Here.
Mr. Majors, Ms. Williams.
Present. Thank you, Mr. Petrosky. Mr. Majors is excused today. Moving on to committee business, but before we do that, we will have a presentation by Ms. Shilva Ford and Ms. Nona Watson, and it's regarding the small business collaboration with the Impact Harrisburg and the Harrisburg City Board. Are you there today?
I am here. Thank you, President Williams. And thank you, members of City Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Very good. So thank you for this opportunity to bring this presentation before you. You'll recall that the last time I appeared before City Council, I informed the council that I was going to present a presentation on the activities in which Impact Harrisburg have been involved over the past few years. A day or two after that is when Governor Wolf actually ordered the shutdown, essentially, of the state of Pennsylvania because of the coronavirus pandemic. And as a result of that, what we did as an organization was to really change our course. We talked about introducing a second round of funding, but we decided that we needed to respond to the emergency that was at hand, that we saw businesses closing and most particularly small businesses in our communities, and that through their closure, it was impacting the ability of businesses to retain employees or the potential for them to rehire employees when things go back to some semblance of normalcy in the what we hope is in the appropriate future. I'm not going to say the near future, when we deem it safe to do so. So Impact Harrisburg decided for a number of reasons that it was reasonable and appropriate for us to take a look at our resources and to seek a partnership with the city of Harrisburg to build a $1 million fund. The name of the fund is the Neighborhood Business Stabilization Fund, the purpose of which is to help neighborhood businesses survive during this pandemic. And it is hoped that this assistance will help employers with emergency cash flow needs during this time and help, as I said previously, help retain and continue to pay employees where possible. I indicated that we're viewing this as a joint initiative. This is somewhat unique in nature. It's one of the first of its kind in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in a city that's certainly the size of Harrisburg. And we've noticed that other cities are taking note and watching us closely. And we've gotten calls from them asking us what it is we're doing and when we're going to begin. And that's why I'm giving this presentation today. I talked about $500,000 coming in from Impact Harrisburg. What our hope is and expectation is that the city of Harrisburg will be able to match that with a $500,000 contribution as well. The expectation is that we will launch this on Friday, April 24th, 2020. We understand that you have in front of you today a memorandum of understanding, which we have worked with your city solicitor in preparing. And you also have in front of you the application for the Neighborhood Business Stabilization Program. What I'd like to do, President Williams, if at your discretion, of course, is just spend just a very few moments going over the elements of the program, how we are going to undertake, permit you to undertake your due diligence and consideration of the sources and uses of the $500,000 in city dollars under consideration as a contribution to the fund, and to talk about its sort of overall structure. So with your permission, I'd like to do that. So in terms of eligibility, the eligibility, this program is designed for city licensed neighborhood businesses that are located in Harrisburg with a strong preference for MBE, WBE, and DBEs. We think that's very important. We think that diversity is a big attribute in our community. And to that extent, let me also state that on the Impact Harrisburg website, where we will have the application available for applicants to use on Friday, officially on our opening date, that there will also be a Spanish language application available, because we understand that we have a population of between 25 and 30% of Spanish speaking individuals, and we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity for them, because that's a vibrant part of our business community, to also be able to apply. We talked about small businesses. So we have relegated this particular program to those businesses that should have under $1 million in most recently reported annual gross revenue. Let me say this, though. It's important to know that no less than, meaning that at least 50% of the grant funds, so 50% of total funding, which is $500,000 awarded, will be directed to businesses with an annual gross revenue of $500,000 or below. So that means that what we are doing is really making a directed outreach to those businesses in the community that are the smallest of the small. So we also will have an opportunity to that, going to that particular issue, to also, for those businesses, those mom and pop stores, to actually, if people can't file an online application, we will have a Word document that they can fill out online and that they can mail in or they can upload. So we are really trying to make this available to a wide cross-section of the city's business community, what we call the small business community. Businesses also must have a demonstrated or projected reduction in monthly revenue of more than 25% as a result of COVID-19. They have to demonstrate that grant funds will be used in promoting this program and their business. In terms of, I'm moving quickly through this, please, I'd be happy to take questions at the end, but I really wanted to give you a clear sense of what it is we're doing. We really see this as an important initiative to help our small businesses and in turn to help the residents of our community. And so that when we start moving in a direction of reopening, we will have done a good deed and provided some measure of financial assistance to the small businesses within our community. So as I said, this is intended to provide emergency operating funds for neighborhood businesses that are closed and that have experienced reduced foot traffic. Eligible uses, they would include rental or mortgage payments, utilities, payroll, real estate taxes, outstanding vendor invoices, and the like. In terms of the timeline, we talked about opening this coming Friday, April 24th. We intend to make decisions on or about May 7th, 2020, and we will be notifying applicants of our decisions on or right after that date. And I think this is also important moving forward. I know I'm talking fast, but there are really some real essential components to this. It's important to know that nonprofits are eligible for this program as well, and that the grant eligibility is up to $10,000, and that we do have an evaluation process. We Impact Harrisburg will serve as the evaluator. We're going to pull the data. We can call data through our application. We can carry that forward into an Excel spreadsheet, which will allow us to evaluate. That will have, it will be a grid, and it will essentially show MBE, DBE. It will show, annual revenues, gross revenues. It will also show various other metrics, and we will also review the narrative. Again, that will be placed into a spreadsheet. We will be working very closely with Nona Watson, the city's economic development director, who has worked closely with us on this process as well as we build out the application. And I wanted to say that we are very, I think we've established a very good and strong relationship with Ms. Watson and with Jamal Jones, who is also in the Office of Economic Development. The expectation is that this process will be streamlined, that it will create effective and efficient, an effective and efficient audit trail, and it will be in keeping with goals around equity and integrity in terms of our processes. We understand also that City Council will want to report back, and so that information that I talked about that is provided on that Excel spreadsheet, we will have that information that is, you know, in a form that is accessible. And we think that this is the kind of good relationship that we really want between the city of Harrisburg. And when I say the city, I mean the executive and legislative branch and Impact Harrisburg. I'd like to add that today I had a brief conversation with an administrator from the Harrisburg School District who talked to me about the partnership between the city and the school district around utilizing Channel 20 for purposes of providing lessons to the school district. To me, this is the kind of partnership that has been created. What I'm talking about in the instant matter, the Neighborhood Business Stabilization Program to help small businesses. This is akin to that program. This is about really having all of us branch out a little bit more in a way that is meaningful and helpful to our communities. We want to see people get back to work at the right time, and we want to do our share. And at that, I'd be happy to turn it over to maybe to Ms. Watson, but I would defer back to you, President Williams.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Ms.
welcome.
Watson, would you also like to give an overview?
Thank you, Council President. It is just such a pleasure to join you all in this meeting. We are very excited about this program. We are excited to partner with Impact Harrisburg. Just want to thank the board there. Want to thank Sheila and also Larry Seagal. As she stated, it has been a great working relationship so far, and we're just excited about it. I just want to reiterate how important it is for us to have this program, especially during this difficult time, because we know and understand that our neighborhood businesses, as I stated before, that they are the backbone, they are the foundation of our local economy. But not only that, but also that when we support these businesses, we're also supporting families, we're supporting our residents, we're supporting our neighborhoods, and we're supporting the local economy. And as Sheila stated, when we come up out of this thing, we don't want to just rebound, we want to thrive. We want to make sure that our businesses are okay, as well as our residents. So with that being said, I think Sheila did an excellent job giving the overview, so I'll turn it back over to you, Council President.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. Thank you, Ms. Ford. I do have a couple of questions. As a matter of fact, you answered a couple of them, and I wanted to know how much each business will receive, and you said up to $10,000. And also my question was, what type of requirement will you give to the business as far as to utilizing those funds? And you identified that with more, I mean, with their rent, with their employee salaries.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, how will you regulate that these businesses will utilize the funds as you request? How will you regulate that? Now, you talked about an Excel sheet. Will you utilize that on an Excel sheet and identify how they're using the funding? Or will you require them to give you a receipt?
We have, so what we've done, Council President Williams, is we've taken, what we have done is to balance what we would do in what I would call ordinary times and normal times, which is to go out, take a look at everything, you know, and sort of kick the tires and do all of that. We can still do some of that now. So we will be doing some of that in terms of going out and seeing what is in fact happening. But we also have what we call a belt and suspenders approach, which is we think efficient and effective, which is we have in our letter, first of all, in their application, they make various certifications, legal certifications and assurances, and we about how the money if they receive an award, will be spent. But the expectation is around how they will use those resources. We also, in our grant award letter, we also indicate that they will certify that they will use the grant in the manner in which they have indicated, and they must sign off on that. That becomes a contract between us and them. And then we can, in fact, enforce that if we need to. So we have taken that additional insurance so that's what we've done.
Okay. And if they are found in violation, will you require them to repay the money?
Yes, and we let them know that up front.
Okay, that's also included. All right.
Yes.
Okay, council members, I'll open it up to you. Just raise your hand. Let me know if you want to ask a question. Okay, Mr. Alec.
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, Sheila. Thanks for being here and
Good
presenting.
evening.
My question was really around the committee to review the applications and make decisions on that. Because we're a small city and because I feel like there's 6 degrees of separation between any of us, what types of things are you looking at to perhaps avoid conflict of interest for people who have a connection with a small business or something like that, just to kind of ensure that this is a fair process? Because my fear is that the amount of people who will want to apply and truly on paper would be qualified beneficiaries of it would be many, and the recipients will be far fewer than I think what people may want to see. So I'm just thinking how we can infuse a process of fairness and perhaps, reduce any instance of a conflict of interest or something that might come up that would seem on one level to be somewhat arbitrary or not particularly fair to the intent of the program.
So that's a good question. Thank you, Ben. It's good to see you, Councilman Allen. So we're all in different venues. It's sort of unusual. So in any event, let me address that. First of all, let me say that the Impact Harrisburg Board signs an annual conflicts of interest statement. So let's start there. And so we also, there is a requirement that where there is a conflict, that the conflict is disclosed to the board, and that is a process on which we are audited annually by Mayor Dussel, our auditor. So we do have an annual conflicts of interest process in place. So let's start there from the sort of the standpoint of what we do in general as a board. And so we have utilized that process in relation to the previous program, that the grants program that we implemented. My expectation is that we will use that and going forward with this program, because you are right, it is a small community, which means that we have to have at the very least disclosure, and we will have that. But we also have in the application, if you turn to the sort of the back pages, as it were, you'll see under what we ask for in terms of information. So we ask for information that will allow us to make some really objective assessments. Mm-hmm. And we think that what that does is to really minimize the risk of the kinds of conflicts of interest arising. Because the reality is that, yes, we're going to have a list, and we will know some of the programs just as we have in our previous programs. But if we utilize those objective measures, for example, looking at total gross revenue for February 2020, actual gross revenue for the period of March 15th, 2022, April 15th. So that gives us, and also then looking at what happened the year before. So that will, in fact, give us once again, that becomes a sifting out process by which we are able to use what we would call an apples to apples comparison model, so that we can move through this process and get to a point where we can, for example, determine who is eligible, who isn't. Once again, we're going to do that. We'll have baskets. Who falls into the 500,000 and below in terms of annual gross revenue? Who falls into the 500,001 and above gross revenue? And then look at those baskets. And then if we in fact find that we have a lot more applicants, which, I mean, then we need to make some additional assessments. And what we will do is keep you all informed, but we think that as we move through this process, that we have it pretty much so far so good. You know, you can't plan for every contingency, but we do think that the apples to apples comparison that we're making now, the duty to disclose, the idea of bringing fairness and equity, and really making sure that we get the dollars out to the businesses, which is the overarching objective. We think we're balancing those kind of competing factors in a way that is, I think, fairly objective, but also will bring equity to the process.
Great. Do you foresee a follow-up to the application process, like a further interview or a request for subsequent information at this point as part of your process?
We have, in our application, we have retained the discretion to ask for additional information. And I expect that we will be doing so as we move through. I talked about those baskets. We will have a basket that really does require additional information. And we can do that in a way that is, it's not going to be unduly burdensome, once again, because we need to do it in a way that is efficient and effective, but where we can in fact obtain that additional information. And I think that Mr. Jones, Jamal Jones, will be helpful in a good resource in helping us get that information. And I will also be doing a fair amount of that follow-up as well.
Great. And the only other follow-up I'd have is just maybe more as a special request or something for consideration. I know that a lot of the firms that we're looking at that might have some greater ability to receive these funds would be disadvantaged businesses, minority representation, women, and going through some of the more underrepresented groups. Something that might be helpful for a way for them to communicate. And the Port Authority of New York does this, New York and New Jersey, when they bring in a vendor of any sort or anyone gets any contract whatsoever, is they actually require the businesses to submit a diversity plan. How do they speak to both the culture and the climate of their organization, building an inclusive workforce and things like that? I would love that to be a part of it, no matter if they're a disadvantaged business of any category whatsoever, because I think it speaks to the nature of a organization's vision and values.
Yes.
And how that aligns with what we want to stand for as a community. I just think it might be a nice little thing to be able to build into that and force it to be in their own words. And the reason why I thought of it is that I've been asked as part of like my day job to consult businesses to build that as they prepare for these types of things. And you know what, it would be great for us to be able to incorporate that as well.
That's a really good suggestion. And as we engage in interactions with them, we will in fact employ that as well. I mean, it's going to be, we see this as an opportunity to get to know some of these businesses better as well. And every one of the businesses, one of the basic eligibility criteria is that they have to be a licensed business in the city of Harrisburg. So this is an opportunity for us to really, and for Ms. Watson, for Nona Watson, who brings expertise from really good expertise to this process, and we'll have an opportunity to get to know our city a bit more, who arrived during a crisis period, but for her to get to know these businesses and for us to do the same thing, and to be able to map some strategies for you all, to be able to map some strategies to find out. First of all, the demographic data is going to be interesting, right? It's going to give us an opportunity to take a deeper dive around that, just in general, just to see the diversity of our city, and sort of in all of its facets, but also to be able to really do a deeper dive also around the expectations of the businesses and how they're doing, just to get a feel for that. And as you were asking the question, it occurred to me that your background had informed them. I sort of remembered it. No, they were quite insightful. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I have, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Mattson, any questions?
Yeah, real quick. Thank you for the presentation. This is great work. It's important work. So I appreciate you coming out tonight and giving us this information.
Sure.
How can council help promote the information once you start sending it out? Do you have any tidbits on what we could do there to help promote it?
I think that I want you, first of all, it's always good to talk to your constituents. You know, your council colleague mentioned that it is a small community. Word of mouth is a really effective way of getting information sort of out into the grapevine in this community. If you have a web page that you use, Facebook, other social media, please do that. We will be working with Nona Watson and with Jamal Jones over the next few days between now and Friday to really to develop greater education and information around this, to get it out into the larger community. I would like for you all to really talk it up, because it's also a measure. We want to, once again, we're real interested to see what we get in, sort of how the pipeline, you know, what we get into the pipeline. We, you know, there was what the federal government did. It did not reach. I mean, there's a lot of chatter about that, how it did not reach the businesses that we're trying to reach, essentially, or it might have reached a small segment of the population we are trying to reach. We're trying to reach a different demographic of the business strata, and we want to do a good job of it. So please talk it up. You know, Shemaine Daniels has her newsletter, you know, which I like to say that I start to read in Spanish, because the Spanish part is first, and I start, and then I get about 4 sentences in and realize that I'm missing half the words because my Spanish isn't as good as it should be. So I scroll down to the English part, and it is really informative. That's what we need. So use the media at your disposal, please. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as soon as you have the information, please send it our way. I'm happy to promote through my
Will do.
And
Thank you.
One last question on the nonprofit piece. Are you prioritizing certain issues? For example, I know 211, the statewide hotline that people can call into, they're seeing a lot of requests for housing and for utilities and food. So are you going to prioritize any certain need in the community while reviewing applications?
As we move through, we look at the applications that we receive. I want to, first of all, thank you for that suggestion. I think it's a question, but it's also a thought piece for us, which is to be mindful of the need to engage in that level of scrutiny and prioritization. And so I will inform as we move through that. We'll talk about doing that for certain, because that is incredibly important. And also I want to say, to the extent that we may need to reach back out to City Council for some counsel and advice, you know, we know where to find you all, and we will do that. As you know, I've done throughout this. This has been important to do that. So thank you for that. And we'll look at that very closely as we prioritize.
Okay, very good. Let us know what you end up doing and prioritizing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
Okay.
Yes.
That's it. Ms. Bowers. Ms. Bowers.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Good evening.
Okay.
Good evening.
Thank you, ladies, for your presentation this evening. I have a comment and a question. So first, my comment, I really appreciate that the application will be available in both English and Spanish, and that the overall project and fund seem to be very inclusive. So I would like to commend you on your work there. My question is regarding the application. I know you said that it will be available via the Impact Harrisburg website. Will it also be available on the city website?
And the expectation is that it will be available on the citywide website. I would defer to, we are moving at a very fast pace only because of the emergent nature of this. So we had talked about that. And what I'd like to do is to ask Ms. Watson if she wants to update us on whether or not that is something that is doable at this point.
That is something that we are working on our end with our IT department. But initially, we will have the link that will lead them to the application on Impact Harrisburg's website until we get all of that straightened out.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Bowers.
Thank you.
Ms. Daniels.
Thank you so much for the presentation. So I just have a few questions to clarify a little bit. I know initially folks were talking about the program being a loan that would turn into a grant. Is it now a grant?
It is a grant. Would you like for me to go into a greater detail about why?
Yes, please.
Sure. And in part, it is because there is a tremendous amount of administration that is associated with administering a loan that converts into a grant. And we are a small organization and a lean organization. And we thought about so we did the balancing of that and thought, well, if we in fact have some assurance and security that the money is in fact being used for the purposes for which it was intended, and we have put those kinds of caveats and assurances in place, then we are comfortable with it going out as a grant. If in fact it is not, then we have what we would call in sort of generic terms a clawback, where we can pull the money back, but it is essentially, we can in fact enforce the opportunity to have a reimbursement of the money.
Okay. And will the applications be processed on a first come, first served basis, or will you be taking in all of the applications and then making decisions on the loans?
We are going to do what I would call a hybrid. It's not going to be first in, first out. It's going to be one where we look at the applications as they come in, but we're going to look at the whole universe of applications. And so I talked about those baskets, one that meets the eligibility criteria goes into the, eligible basket. Those that don't go into the ineligible basket. We'll have that on an Excel spreadsheet as well. Of course, we're going to keep track of everything. And our, once again, we talked to our auditor about process because internal controls are important to us. And so what we will do is move through them and make some assessments, but that will roll into that final decision date, which will be on or around May 7th. Okay. You don't want to be held to
I know.
I don't want to get 2,000 phone calls May 7th. Okay. So.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say I would be cautious. But I also wanted to have a sense of, do you have an idea of when funds would start to be distributed?
We expect that the funds, once we make those decisions, that as of May 7th or thereabouts, once again, we expect to immediately begin to distribute funds. And we have talked to our bankers. Our finance chair has talked to our bank, and we have a process in place. We've done this, of course, not in the at the magnitude that we expect for this program, but we've done it previously with our grants program. And so we will begin to provide checks and or ACH to the grantees. We want to make it as fast and efficient and convenient as possible. And people they don't want to wait, and we don't want them to wait.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the 25% loss, if it has already been incurred, will it be based will it be tied to the periods the governor issued orders, or will you be looking at losses that maybe predate governor's orders a little bit, since I think some businesses started to feel effects a little earlier?
So this is where we may need to use a bit of discretion, but we were generally talking, but in a fair way, of course, and discretion can be used in a way that is equitable. But it really is about looking at around the time of the governor's order, and we'll be able to, we actually will accumulate sufficient data to be able to draw some inferences from that, about when the losses occurred. Yes.
Okay. And I appreciate Councilman Ben's recommendation about having a plan. I do want to caution that maybe at this point, it might be better to have a conversation, because small businesses are really overburdened right now. So having to develop additional paperwork is really hard. And I know for me personally, even though commuting has been eliminated from my work, it just takes so much longer to do my classwork,
Sure.
So even folks who have it easy like myself, things are just taking much longer to do.
And I do appreciate that. And certainly we've experienced that in terms of reaching out. Let me say that I think this is exciting because the partnership will allow us to, will allow the city to sort of build relationships, actually, even more so than Impact Harrisburg, but the city, proper to build relationships with the business community in ways that are perhaps different as we move forward. Thank you.
And I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Ms. Green?
Thank you, President Williams. Thank you, ladies, for your presentation. I think that an opportunity like this is very much needed in our city for our small businesses that are suffering. I don't have many questions. They've mostly been answered by, asked by my colleagues. One question I do have, you said about mailing in applications, but I don't see an address where they will mail them into.
It should be to actually, so what we were talking about was having them emailed to me at sheila.ford@comcast.net. But if we, because of the quick turnaround time, let me check on the snail mail component to see, and that would be to our PO box, which I can have added to our application. So thank you for having me. And I hope I didn't overstate the ways in which they can get them to us. They can certainly send them through the portal, sheila.ford@impactharrisburg.org, but I will check on the other component, okay? So thank you
All
for
right.
pointing that out. And I hope I didn't overstate it. You're welcome.
Thank you both. Is there any other questions? Thank you
Council
both, Ms.
President?
Watson. I'm sorry.
Council President, I just like to say, excuse me, I just like to say one thing that I did not mention is where the funds for the city will be coming from. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. We were looking at using the revolving loan fund because there are monies that's sitting in that fund for the $500,000 from the city. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Watson, and thank you, Ms. Ford. I know you've been working each and every day, and you certainly put this program in action very swiftly.
Thank you.
Brought it to fruition. I thank you very, very much. It's desperately needed for the small businesses in the city of Harrisburg. So thank you both for all the hard work. I do have one more question, Ms. Ford, and I'll let you go. I'm concerned about the small businesses that have already exceeded the $10,000 limit that you mentioned. So what, in that case, what would they do? Can they ask for additional funding from you?
You know, we haven't, Council President Williams, we haven't really, we know that that might be the case. We're going to try to get an assessment of how many fall into that category.
Okay.
And what we haven't talked about, though, as of yet, although there have been sort of rumblings about it, is well, okay, a couple of things. First of all, we think it's important that this be used as an opportunity to measure what you just talked about, which is to measure capacity. That's what we're going to be doing here. But also being able to figure out how for example, the Department of Economic Development at the city can help those businesses to find other resources so that we can leverage them. And maybe there's a way, but what we can, and so that's where the information that we cull this whole process and we synthesize is so important. And so we have, you know, a ceiling of $10,000 ceiling, and we are, you know, once again. So I know that there will be some, we don't know whether there will be a lot, but we're going to have to maybe go back to the drawing board. I don't know what that means, and I don't want to get out, you know how I am about that. I will never get ahead of my board or city council or the city administration in that regard. But it may be something we need to come back in to talk about.
Okay. Well, I know when you're talking about 500,000, that only leaves about 100 businesses in the city, but I'm sure most of them have already exceeded the $10,000 limit, and they've had to pay for rent, utilities, and all the other necessities that goes along with the business. So when you look at 10,000, it doesn't go very far, especially with employees who they may have 10 or 15 employees.
I agree, President Williams, and it's up to 10,000. So, which means that we don't know how many will, you know, receive 10 or something less than 10.
Okay.
So I appreciate that. There's one final thing I'd like to say. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for this opportunity to make this presentation and for really building this partnership. And I'd also like to thank my board. They've done a wonderful job of really marshaling this process, and our compliance consultant, Larry Siegel, who has been a wonderful partner throughout this and ushering us through this. We have really worked well with all of the participants. I talked about Ms. Watson, Mr. Jones, Mayor Popenthus, and it really has been, and Council President Williams, early on, you and I talked about this, for on 2 or 3 different occasions, and really worked out some of the early details of this in those discussions. So thank you. That's all I have for now.
Thank you very much.
All right. Can we sign off now?
Yes, you may. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Enjoy.
Bye.
Bye.
Moving on to committee business. We now will have Mr. Mattson, who will continue on.
President Williams, real quick, did Neil have a question?
Pardon me?
Neil had his hand raised. I just.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, Neil. I didn't see you. Mr. Grover?
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Mr. Grover. You're still on mute.
There we go. I was just raising the process question because of the quick timetable for this available. So what's going to come down next week is a resolution that does a couple things. One, they're going to ask to suspend the rules, have a resolution to authorize the agreement, and at the same time authorize the allocation of the revolving loan funds so that they could be transferred in time to get the early May money out the door. The plan is that this Friday, the application window will open. The board has no idea whether or not we will get 100 applications or 1,500 applications, and that will sort of drive some of the analysis. It's not a competitive grant in that sense that there isn't a lot of objective standards. And but by Tuesday, we may be able to have a sense to the council of how far it's come since Friday, once the window opened. But you'll be asked to vote on to get this money out the door starting Tuesday. So we can have the transfer done by the end of next week. I just wanted to make clear that that's what we need to do to keep it moving. Otherwise, we would be well into May and the money would be delayed out to the businesses as we're going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Grover, it was my intention to put this on the agenda for Tuesday for a vote on the April 24th legislative session.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. My concern is, are we accepting applications before we vote on this, the allocation of the money?
So technically, it's an Impact Harrisburg program, and Impact Harrisburg money is there in the fund. The city's making a contribution to that fund. So the applications aren't going to be awarded before Tuesday. It's just the window is going to come because there'll be some backup documentation. There's a good chance a lot of people will have to come back and forth a little bit, with additional documentation about their what revenue period they fall into and their proof of that. So they'll open on Friday. Our initial information is that there is less than probably 2,000 registered businesses that are fully city located out of all the licenses. So that starts our upper end of the window. And then we have the ones based on economics that are above the $1 million. And so, there is a target there that doesn't count the nonprofits. But we could still end up with, 800 or 1,000 or 200 applications for the $1 million pot.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Grover. And also today the DID met. So just a little bit of FYI information, but before we officially as the executive board vote on this, we were considering giving a pool of $50,000 to the small business in the city, but we have to do a vote on that before we can allocate the money. So that's another resource that some of the small businesses can look forward to.
And Impact Harris will be happy to administer that as part of this if they're interested. We are looking for other partners. And in the sense of disclosure here, I will know, people at the table know this, but I am both the president of that board and counsel for the city. And I had asked the mayor, who provided a waiver, that I could do both things for this particular program to keep it moving and help prepare the documents, just so the money could get out to the public, and the city and Impact Harris have the same interest in this, is assisting this businesses as fast as possible to retain them in the city.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Grover. Anything else before we move on to committee business?
Madam President, one other thing related to operations going forward. The governor signed Act 15 yesterday, which changes the public advertising for public meetings, both the city council and our boards. There's going to be the ability to put the notice for non-emergency related events on our website, but they have to be published 5 days at least before the vote. So things like land development plans have to be up and advertised on the website at least 5 days ahead of a city council vote on it. Emergency actions related to COVID-19 reactions like this can be done in a shorter period of time. But as we start to move towards normalcy, we will have a different advertising regimen that we are allowed to do for a period of time until the governor lifts his orders.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grover. Anything else?
No, thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome. Moving on to committee business, Community and Economic Development Committee. Mr. Mattson, I'm now turning it over to you.
Yes, thank you, President Williams. Ms. Houston, could you read the resolution into the minutes? Resolution 19.
I'm here, and just before we move forward, Council President, I just wanted to make sure that you're aware. I realized that you weren't a host, but Shemaine, Councilwoman Daniels has a question before we proceed.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Daniels?
Okay. Yes. So Neil, do you know if the pot of money from Impact or Harrisburg, is there a mechanism that if people wanted to contribute to that pot that they could? You're muted.
You're muted, no.
Impact Harrisburg is a 501c3, which can accept donations for what we do is economic development and other issues in the city. In the course of promoting this program, I think we're just going to open it up as wide as we can to solicit other funds. Up till this point, the money that we're getting from the city on this is the first non-strong plan money we're administering. We have been purely administering strong plan money all this time. So it is a bit new to us. And we're in the middle of doing the paperwork to solicit funds. We have some additional reporting requirements with it, but it's a very fluid scenario and we can accept funds to this particular fund at the moment as the one we would be able to do and simply add it to that pot. And there's a good chance we will need a lot more the longer this goes on to sustain local businesses.
Anyone else have any questions for Neil? Okay, Mr. Mattson.
Thank you, President Williams. Mr. Petrosky, could you read the resolution 19 into the minutes, please?
Sure. Resolution 19 of 2020. It's a resolution approving the lot consolidation and preliminary final land development plan submitted by Jonathan Hudson to construct a 3-story, 129,000 square foot office building with on-site parking at the property to be known as 2525 North 7th Street.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Mr. Knight?
Yes, I believe I have my audio on, but I think Moment needs to turn on my camera really quickly, but I'll start in the meantime. As noted, this project will be essentially a redevelopment of the D&H distributing site up at the corner of North 7th Street and Division Street. The property is comprised of, I think, 7 individual parcels and a right-of-way to be vacated, a portion of Schuylkill Street that will be addressed by City Council at a later date here. But the project will consolidate all of these various parcels and will result in the demolition of the building on site, as well as the transfer of the existing solar panel array on the property, and then the construction of a new office building surrounded to the north and south by state employee parking that's reserved for employees, and then a small parking lot directly in front of the building. The project will also reduce the number of curb cuts into the street along 7th Street and reconstruct some of the sidewalks and pedestrian infrastructure there in conformance with some of the city engineer's comments. Both the Planning Bureau and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the proposal with the following conditions. That the applicants will address city engineers' comments regarding the construction of at-grade sidewalks and driveways for access points along the portion of the property fronting 7th Street, and the establishment of a safe ADA compliant crossing from the accessory parking lot at Radnor Street Park across the street. I believe D&H already has a lease with the city for use of that parking, and I believe the intention is to transfer that lease to the applicant. So we want to make sure that there is an ADA compliant sidewalk to cross from one side of the 7th Street to the other. The applicant will coordinate with city engineer regarding appropriate signage, markings, and improvements to North 7th Street and major intersecting streets as necessary. The applicant will continue their coordination with CRW regarding the installation of stormwater management infrastructure on site and any connections to the existing storm sewer network. The project will result in a decrease in impervious surface of about 21% of the property, from about 96% to 75%, I believe. So there will be a reduction in stormwater impacts on the network. And then the applicant will continue coordination with the city arborist regarding planting of new street trees along the site in adjacent rights of way, and which the applicant has currently been working on. The applicant will continue coordination efforts with the city engineer's office regarding the removal and the disposition of the solar array on site. As I said, they've committed to transferring that to the city, and I don't believe we have a final end use for that though. And then the applicant will install 3 sets of bike racks, 1 in each of the 2 secured parking lots for employees and 1 in the publicly accessible parking lot in front of the building. We recommend a minimum of 5 racks at each location, and would further recommend that they be located close to the entrances, as well as being sheltered if possible from the elements. So ultimately, this proposal will is recommended for approval because it's going to represent a improvement to a recently vacated site that might have remained a bit vacant for some time, given the nature of the site and of the building on the property. The project will substantially improve the aesthetics of the site, replacing the existing chain link fences, and as I noted, making improvements to the right of way, including sidewalks and the installation of street trees. There will also be trees installed around the perimeter of the site and the parking lot itself. So in addition to improved aesthetics, we'll have benefits on the things like urban heat island effect and stormwater runoff. And then if the recommendations from the city engineer are incorporated, the residents from the surrounding community, as well as future state workers on site, will have improved pedestrian access to and along the project site. And so with that, I'll hand it off to the applicants. Mr. Jonathan Hudson is with us, and Mr. Eric Hunter are with us to let them fill in any more information they'd like to provide about the project.
Yes, this is Jonathan Hudson speaking. Is everybody able to hear me okay?
Yeah, real quick. I know Mr. Knight touched on it, but could you give, for the record, could you just give your name and your title and presenting?
Yes, my name is Jonathan Hudson. I'm a vice president with the Hudson Companies, and I'll allow Eric Hunter to introduce himself as well.
Thank you.
I am Eric Hunter. I'm one of the partners with the Hudson Companies.
Thank you.
And we do also have our engineer here with us on the call, Dan Wise of RJ Fisher Engineers. I'll let Dan say hello and introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Dan Wise. I'm with RJ Fisher Engineering, engineering consultant for the project.
Great, thank you. With that being said, that's the introduction of the Hudson Companies team for this project to take place at 2525 North 7th Street. Jeffrey, I appreciate your introduction to the project there. And I do not have many additions or descriptions to be made to what you already brought up. I would like to add, Jeffrey, you did mention several recommendations that were given to us by the city engineer and also from Planning Commission. we have agreed to all of those conditions and those suggestions, such as the crosswalk, improving intersection signage, and the driveway aprons, I believe was the third comment back from the city engineer. So all of those items we have agreed to and are happy to do that. With that being said, it's a project that we're extremely excited about to present here to City Council. I did see a couple screen shares with the building rendering there. We believe the project, amongst what Jeffrey said, as far as reducing impervious area, really improving upon a currently currently is vacant building there, along with our end user. Is the state of Pennsylvania, the Department of Human Services and Office of Administration. So a long-term user to really anchor that corridor and anchor that corner at Division in 7th Street. With that being said, I'd be happy, I do want to be cognizant of everybody's time here. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions that the council may have about the project. And both Eric, myself, or Dan would be happy to do that at this time, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So real quick, I'll start with Mr. Knight. Mr. Knight, are you off mute?
Yep.
Okay. Real quick, so there was a community meeting regarding this project, I think it was about a month ago, and something constituents brought up, concern over the intersection at Division. I know you touched on it in your remarks, but is there going to be anything done in the engineer's plan to address that intersection, or to make it, I guess the fear is during high volume times, it can be a little tricky to navigate for commuters.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anything, and I'm not sure if Wayne's at this meeting or not, but and could fill in a little bit more. But as I understand it, there aren't any firm proposals for improvements to that particular intersection, but that's one of the reasons I kind of phrased one of the conditions I did, is that they would continue working with them on improvements at major intersections. If, as the project progresses, Wayne comes up with something, we want to make sure that that's still on the table for everybody. But I think those are part of the longer term plans for the 6th, 7th, and Division Street corridor. You may have remembered that a few years ago, I believe, Wallace Montgomery maybe, or Michael Baker was developing some plans for those 3 corridors, and it's kind of an extension of the 2nd Street conversion and 3rd Street projects, because all of the network is tied in together. And so I think the thinking is that they're maybe waiting to see how those plans and projects progress without trying to move too far ahead on any one aspect to ensure that that's all coordinated.
Okay, thank you for that.
If I might add to that, this is Dan. There was a traffic analysis done for that intersection at Division Street and 7th Street. The recommendations were for paint striping on the road and stop bars and signage at that intersection. So we have made those changes and those revisions to the plan, and are poised to submit that plan with the plan that will address all the conditions of approval, so that you'll be able to see that those signage and pavement marking improvements are being done at that intersection.
Okay, thank you. All right. So my next question is for the applicant. Will local contractors have an opportunity to bid on the project?
Yes, thank you. This is Jonathan Hudson speaking. Yes, they will most definitely have the opportunity to do so. We have had one community meeting thus far where we engaged the Camp Curtin neighborhood at the Camp Curtin YMCA, the Uptown neighborhood rather, at the Camp Curtin YMCA. That was really more of a community meeting. We actually had an in-person meeting scheduled for late March to take place at the Camp Curtin YMCA as well. where we worked with Jamal from the mayor's office and from the city to promote reaching out to local contractors, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and other disadvantaged-owned business enterprises. We unfortunately had to pivot and cancel that meeting due to the COVID-19 outbreak here that happened. So we are targeting to have a virtual meeting like one that we're on right now for the first week of May, date to be exactly determined. But that will be our first community outreach event where we will have our construction team on there talking about the various contracts that will be available, timelines associated with that, and the process of bidding. So that is something that we always want to work with local vendors, local contractors, and suppliers to the best of our ability.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yep.
As soon as you have information, please send it our way so we can share it through our.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I would like to add one thing, Mr. Madsen, is that we also reached out to the local, the only item we've really been, this is Eric Hunter, sorry, by the way. The only item we've actually went out to bid on is the demolition of the existing facility. We did contact a variety of local contractors to see who would be interested in bidding that. There were not a lot of contractors interested in the demo portion of the work, but we did reach out to Pensy Supply. So on the tip of my tongue, the other large supply house in Harrisburg, for local site contractors who'd be interested in bidding it. And we have also, we plan on, as soon as the plans are completed, posting it to the local, small business, small businesses and minority businesses so that all the phases of work are open for bidding. We have no selected contractors. We plan on opening it up to anyone and everyone that's interested.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, thank you. That is it for me. I will open it up to questions from my colleagues. And I believe Councilwoman Daniels had a question, so I'll kick it over to her.
Thank you. In terms of the occupancy of the building, what does the occupancy before and what do we expect the occupancy to be, or use? I don't know what the
Yeah, of course. It's a great question. So as the site sits today, as it was described, and I'll very quickly describe, there currently is an improved warehouse flex office building on site. It was constructed as a warehouse, but it has been used as an office for several years now by D&H Distributing. They had just under, and I can't quote exactly, but they had just under 800 employees that and visitors. They had a lot of outside visitors. So they had roughly 800, between 750 to 800 people there at that facility per day. We are proposing a 130,000 square foot building that will be an office building. And there will be roughly 850 state employees there. So a slight uptick from what was previously there, but very similar in terms of the amount of people that will be reporting to that location.
And just to clarify, Jeff, so D&H was on multiple lots, and so now we're just consolidating all of the lots D&H was on?
That's correct. I believe the solar array was on a separate lot, and this happens a lot in Harrisburg where development of sites occurs across multiple lots, and it's happened decades ago, and it's always existed that way. So that's how the site has existed in a technical sense with all those different properties, and we'll just be combining them as part of this project.
And the solar panels are being transferred to the city?
That is correct. And the applicants are working, I believe, with Mr. Christopher Naif, the sustainability coordinator, as well as Wayne Martin on that.
Okay.
That is correct. Hudson, the solar panels, unfortunately, we do not have the site area to keep them there and hit the parking numbers that we need for our development, but the solar panels are in great condition, and we're currently in the process of giving those to the city to use somewhere else because there's a lot of great life on them left.
Okay. So just a suggestion, Jeff, maybe the city could use them in some of our buildings to generate some of our power, or I know a few residents have already asked about whether they could buy them. So it could be a fundraiser for us too.
Yep. I mean, I'm sure, I believe Mr. Naif will be coming up with a plan for their reuse.
And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Did any other colleagues have a question?
I did, Councilman Matson.
Go ahead, President Williams.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Hudson. I was at your public meeting that you had at the YMCA. I just have a couple of questions. I had a couple of residents inquire whether this will affect the on-street parking that is adjacent to the building presently.
So we will not, our development will not take away from any of that parking.
Okay.
So the only parking that will be associated with our site will be our on-site parking. And we are currently working with the city to come to a lease agreement that was previously held by the D&H Corporation for the parking lot at the ball field that we would use during normal business hours, Monday through Friday. So we would not encroach on any other on-street parking.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Also, will this construction, will it affect the route that travels from Division to 7th? Because that's a highly traveled street.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
construction, will you reroute that traffic in order to complete the construction, or will that not affect that particular area?
That should not affect that particular area. There will be deliveries, but the site is so large that it's actually really beneficial to us that we can bring in, for instance, your large delivery is going to be your structural steel. We'll have plenty of on-site space to stage everything so our traffic involvement will basically be getting to the site. We shouldn't impede or encroach on the current traffic that's going to be there. And in the event that we do have a large delivery coming, we would try to schedule it at a time that would benefit both of us, because it doesn't do our people any good to be sitting there waiting, nor does it do any good to be congesting the road. So we wouldn't anticipate having any impact on your street. We won't have any trucks on the streets. We won't be leaving materials or anything. We'll be within our site, and delivery should come and go fairly smoothly.
Okay. How about Southern Norfolk? Have you been in conversation with them as far as you intend to extend the building back to their fence? So they giving you approval to do that, because you are going back, what you said, I think I'm correct when you said all the way to the end of their property?
We're going to the edge of the property. However, we're not encroaching on their property.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. All of the improvements of the parking in the building will take place on land that is completely and wholly owned by our entity that will be building and owning the property. So we won't have any improvements on the rail yard property.
Thank you, Mr. Matson. That's all I have.
Thank you,
Williams.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Comments? Okay, well, with that, we will move resolution 19 on to the next council meeting for a vote.
Okay.
We appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you.
Have a good day and stay healthy.
Do the same, please.
Thank you for all of your time, council. We appreciate it. Stay safe.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to resolution 21. Mr. Petrowski, could you please read the resolution into the minutes, please?
Yes, resolution 21 of 2020 is a resolution granting an additional extension of time for approval of the subdivision and land development plan for 2216 Brookwood Street, 516 Melrose Street, known as Brookwood Commons, until July 1st, 2020, to allow the Harrisburg Planning Commission to review and make recommendations on the plan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Petrowski. Mr. Knight?
Well, I can actually, I think, maybe let Tiffany take over on this because this is not, I think, as she has kind of discussed in the past, this is not a discussion of the merits of the actual plan, but a approval of a resolution already passed by City Council.
Okay.
Is correct. So if City Council remembers, back in March, I believe, they had approved an extension on this application to allow the applicant time to get in front of the Harrisburg Planning Commission. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the Planning Commission meeting was canceled the first week in April. So the applicant did not have a chance to go in front of the Planning Commission. So they are just now asking for additional time to allow them to get in front of the Planning Commission, which would occur the first week in May, hopefully. And then after Planning Commission has an opportunity to review and make a recommendation, the land development application would come back to City Council for a formal vote.
Okay, thank you for that. And is the applicant here?
Yes, he is on there somewhere.
Hello.
Hello. Well, I know you've come before council at a previous session. Could you still just give us a brief overview of the project and update?
Sure, we had come before council. This was years ago. We didn't think the timing was appropriate to start the project. About going on maybe even 9 months ago now. Went back to the city to try and start things. We talked to city staff who are wonderful to work with. We reevaluated a couple things with the project. Our original entitlement there was 171 apartment units. Since then, we've readjusted that downwards and we're proposing 144 now. There will be 0 changes to the actual recorded plan. This is a plan recorded at the courthouse and already approved already. We were just asking for an extension of time to allow us to get started and moving dirt. And we're excited to finally get started with it. And we were in front of everybody, I guess as Tiffany said, a couple months ago, and submitted our application to be in front of Planning Commission, and that meeting was unfortunately canceled. So we're back in front of you to ask for a couple extra months so we can get back in front of Planning Commission and then be back in front of you guys again.
Okay. All right. I know this may have been asked last time you came before us, but it seems like it's always good to ask. So will their local contractors have an opportunity to bid on the project?
Absolutely. We always do a competitive bidding process, and we try and make sure we're inclusive of everybody.
Okay. Could you maybe just go over some of your outreach plans to maximize local participation?
Am I back? Sorry.
Yeah, you're okay.
Trying to get used to the video conferencing like everybody else.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, we're a smaller entity. So, I mean, we've been in Harrisburg for, I don't know, 10 years. I don't have any particular outreach plans. We have on numerous occasions gone into the city, and the city always keeps lists of minority businesses, women-owned businesses. We've used a couple of them in the past. And like I said, we have a competitive bidding process, and we're inclusive of everybody in that process.
So maybe a good idea would be to reach out to our administration, particularly Mr. Jamal Jones, our small business coordinator, just to make sure that he can give you some tips. And he has a master list of folks that you could, if there is an opportunity to bid, that he could send it out. And then if there is, once you have that bidding information, you could send it to council's way as well. So that way we can promote it and send it through our networks as well.
That'd be fantastic.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so that's it for me. I know we discussed this before, so I'll open it up for questions from my colleagues. Anybody have questions?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, President Williams.
Hello, Mr. Jaffe. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Now, you said the timing wasn't right to complete the project the last time. This has been since 2013. You asked for another extension until March of 2015. Now, here we are again. You're asking for extension until July before the Planning Bureau. I understand that, and I don't have a problem with that. But then again, in this resolution, you're asking until 2022 to complete it. So how can we be assured that the time is going to be right to complete the project?
That's a difficult question. I wish I had a crystal ball and wish I could predict the economy, but as we've all just seen, that's more difficult than we think sometimes. So in the interim, we have done some other projects. We didn't think this one would actually work. When you do a construction project like the magnitude of this one, there's other issues there, financial, where you need appraisals and all sorts of other things just to make sure things actually work. So unfortunately, we were waiting for an opportune time and came in. Like I said, it was probably 9 months ago we started the process to actually begin the land development there, and then we're working with the city to make the project a little bit better before it got started here. And now, of course, we're dealing with the pandemic also.
I understand that, but I'm just concerned that back in 2013, when you originally asked for the approval, and then it's 6 years later, and then now here we are again in front of council. So I just want to be assured that, you won't ask for another extension. This will be your third extension. And I understand that sometimes, finances come into place, but are you going to be able to complete the project or not?
Yes, no, I assure you can. We have the reason we actually changed this, couple things. One, the first extension was actually an extension to record the original plans. We actually got the plan approved by council, and then it took another year to record it. So that was the nature of the first extension. This extension is actually get it started. I can give you assurances that we are planning on starting it. Like I said, as much as anyone can be assured in today's economic environment. I mean, that's our plan, and we intend to do it. We've built projects like this before. We currently have one actually under construction now in York. And that was the impetus to get this one finally moving. And that's also the impetus where we had 171 units. We're copying a building that we've used before, that we've built before, that we think is a good fit here that will work. So
Okay.
that's the intention. Otherwise, wouldn't be asking you.
Okay. What made you decrease the number of apartment complexes that you're going to build?
That's just working together with staff. Jeff can probably opine on that too. But we thought it just made a little less density, and just make it a nicer place for people. So it's not as packed. I mean, 171 was still okay. It met all the criteria, which is what we had on our original recorded plan. But in talking to Jeff, and also in the building that we've built before, we thought it'd be a better way to go that way. Reduces some traffic congestion, that sort of thing.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Mr. Jaffe.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing business in the city of Harrisburg.
Thank you.
Mr. Mattson.
Okay. Did anybody else have any questions? Okay, hearing none. Recommend that we move resolution 20 to our next legislative session for consideration of approval.
21, resolution 21.
21.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Everybody be safe. I will be signing off.
Do the
Thank
same.
you. Take care.
All right, moving on to the next resolution. Mr. Petrowski, could you read resolution 23 into the meeting minutes, please?
Yes, resolution 23 of 2020 is a resolution approving the lot consolidation and preliminary final land development plan submitted by Jamie and Harvey to construct 4 attached single-family townhomes along the 600 block of Woodbine Street.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Knight?
Hello.
Yep.
Oh, hello, Mr. Harvey.
Yep.
Hello, Councilman. Hey, Jamie.
Thank
Can you hear
you,
me?
Jamie. One moment, if you wouldn't mind putting yourself on mute. We're going to have Mr. Knight just give a brief overview of the project, and then we'll open it up for you for introductions and questions.
So,
Thank you.
So the project before you is again a lot consolidation, subdivision, and land development plan for the 600 block of Woodbine Street. It will combine 8 lots and then subdivide that into 4 approximately equal lots on which the single family homes that you see before you, the elevation plans that you see before you, will be constructed. The block is kind of catty corner from the back of the Camp Curtin YMCA site. It's bounded by Jefferson Street, Wharton Alley, Moltke Alley, and Woodbine Street, and it's currently just a vacant lot currently. So the project again is going to result in these 4 affordable housing developments, and I believe, as the applicants have stated in their application, that this is kind of a beginning of a larger proposal for them to do improvements in the neighborhood surrounding the Camp Curtin YMCA, including the construction of new housing units. The Planning Bureau and Planning Commission both recommended approval of the project with the following conditions. The applicant will coordinate with the city engineer to ensure that any new sidewalk infrastructure on the block surrounding the project site will be constructed to meet ADA requirements, and the applicants have agreed to that. And then the applicant will coordinate with the city arborist regarding the planting of any new trees on site or in the surrounding rights of way as part of the project, and the applicants have agreed with that as well. The Planning Commission and Planning Bureau both recommended this be approved for the following reasons. The proposed project will result in the development of currently vacant properties with quality affordable housing, meeting an urgent need specifically within the surrounding community. The applicant has coordinated extensively with the Planning Bureau to ensure that the project will meet all applicable zoning requirements, demonstrate good siting and lot configuration, and provide the most benefit to the surrounding community. And the project will result in the enhancement of the surrounding rights of way, including the improvement of Wharton Alley and Moltke Street, construction of ADA compliant pedestrian infrastructure, and planting of street trees. Given the applicant's ongoing coordination with CRW, and this is in regard to their their stormwater management work on site at the Camp Curtin YMCA, into which this project site will be tied. It is likely that the project will also have additional stormwater management benefits. As noted, the applicant will be working with the city engineer in the city and possibly CRW as well on improving Wharton Alley and Moltke Street to provide access to the rear of the property for residents to park. So this will really have a benefit just beyond the project site. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Harvey and Ms. Hall to provide some more information.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Mr. Harvey?
Yep, I'm here. Jamie Harvey, Executive Director, Camp Curtin YMCA, Cornerstone in Uptown Harrisburg. I have with me today Kathy Hall, who is our Housing Development Director. I also have Dan with us from RJ Fisher. Again, we are looking to bring affordable housing to our community. We are looking to change, the look of our neighborhood. We're looking to eliminate blight. We're looking to, cut down on the drugs and the violence in the neighborhood. And we're looking to build, a community with pride, So this is one of many projects to come, given the situation. The train is still not off the tracks. We're full steam ahead. We're already working on possible phase 2 projects. And I'll turn it over to Dan for anything else.
Well, wanted to mention that there was a recent kind offer from the mayor to participate in and assist the YMCA in the reconstruction of the alleyways that are currently city alleys, the Moltke Alley and and Watson Alley. So that is a little bit different than previously. So I just wanted to mention that. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the rest is just basically as stated, although we have reached out to the city engineer, and there's no further comment that city engineer has on the sidewalks. So what we're doing with the sidewalks will be accessible, and we are proposing to reconstruct the sidewalks as well as add additional street trees to accommodate the city arborist concerns. So. Got it?
Okay. Is there anybody else?
I don't have anything else to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
But if I could,
Excuse me?
if I could add one more thing, again, we're looking to put our community back to work, you know, so we're looking at all minority contractors. You know, we want to show, you know, our community and our kids in the surrounding area that, you know, we can rebuild our community. So we're looking at all minority contractors for our project.
Great. Yeah, so I guess, you know, no shocker there that I was going to ask about that. And then I guess, could you briefly just go over your outreach strategy for the local participation?
I mean, our outreach strategy is, you know, the people that we're honestly working with every day. You know, we try to introduce, you know, our youth in the community. I have a strong relationship and a strong tie being from this community. If there's a minority contractor out there, I've already have a relationship with them, and we're already talking about this project sitting around the table.
Great, great. Yeah, if there's opportunities to bid, please send it our way. So that way we can send it through our networks. I know you already have a strong network in the community there, but that way we know we're covering all channels. Yeah, no, I just want to congratulate you on this work. I know it's been in the works for some time. From what I understand, this is based off some models that the YMCA in York was doing, and they've had some success with it. So it's always great that—
No, I put my flag up. I need to talk.
It's always great when we can learn from one of our sister cities and then use those practices here in full effect.
Should be a raised hand.
Okay, and yeah, so I'm happy to see that this project is moving forward. So with that, I'll open it to questions from my colleagues. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead, President Williams.
Thank you.
Can't send my chat message either. Take it off mute.
Mr. Harvey. Good
Yes.
evening. Good evening. How are you? And what will be?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm fine, thank you. What will be the price range for the affordable housing that you are planning to build in that area?
Okay, so the estimates we actually have right now, we're actually building for about $175,000. And the way our budget is set up, we're looking to sell for between $70,000 and $80,000.
Okay. Do you have banks that you're going to be working with to assist the residents in purchasing of the homes that you have a joint collaboration with?
Yes, right now through our neighborhood assistance program, we actually have M&T Bank on board. We have Mid-Penn Bank on board. We also have S&T Bank on board. And we also have PNC Bank on board. So they're all right now working on, you know, as a partner to come up with strategic strategies to be able to, you know, get folks loans.
Thank you. I'm really very excited. I've been requesting that we do, from this administration, that we do some type of affordable housing in the uptown area. And so, Mr. Harvey, I just want to send a thank you out to you for providing affordable housing for the residents of Harrisburg, and especially for addressing the blight that's in that area. So thank you very much. I'm excited to see this happen, and I certainly will be in approval of this, in favor of this particular project.
Thank you.
That's
Ms.
all.
Williams, may I make a comment, please?
Yes, please, Ms. Kelly.
Yes, this was a project we worked, the Department of Community and Economic Development worked on with Jamie and Kathy, and we see it as a very forward-thinking project that was funded through the Neighborhood Assistance Program in 2020 budget. And as Jamie mentioned, the YMCA of York has done a longer-term 5-year program, the Neighborhood Partnership Program, and would like to work with Jamie and Kathy to do something more extensive that can continue to see that community have a terrific amount of growth and first-time homeowners, and really pull the community together and have a lot of successful opportunities. So we really are grateful that Jamie had approached us for this funding, and we think the Neighborhood Assistance Program can not only benefit Jamie, but some others in the community. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ms. Kelly. Mr. Harvey, just one other question that now I'm sitting here. Is there going to be any assistance that the residents can turn to for closing costs?
For closing costs right now, actually, Community Action is another partner. I just feel like we just built a coalition of partners for this project, and we just have a lot of great people on board. So Community Action is also another partner. And the first-time homeowners that are actually going through their classes are the first ones that we're actually going to look at, you know, for the housing. And, you know, once they actually go through their program, there will be some, you know, closing costs, you know, associated with, you know, helping them.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, it's a great program, and I certainly look forward to seeing this come to fruition. Thank you, Mr. Harvey. That's all I have, Mr. Madsen.
Thank you, President Williams. Did any of my other colleagues have any questions?
I don't have a question, just more of a comment. Of course, I'm very, very, very excited about this opportunity to provide affordable housing. So I just wanted to commend everyone involved in this project. And I hope that this COVID-19 pandemic will not damper the celebration of such a great project within the city.
Agreed. Thank you, Bowers. Did anybody else have any questions or comments?
Not a question, but also a comment. Wanted to echo Council Member Bauer's sentiments on that. We've had so many conversations about projects around affordable housing. It's nice to see this come through and come to fruition. So this is a great model of something that we could look for future development when it comes to affordable housing in an area that desperately needs it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Main Councilman Lott. Anybody else? Okay. Seeing none, I recommend that we move, excuse me one moment, resolution, which number is it again? Sorry.
23.
23.
Resolution 23 on the next legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, City Council.
Thank you. Okay. Next resolution is resolution 24. Mr. Petrowski, could you read the resolution into the minutes, please?
Yes, resolution 24 of 2020. It's a resolution approving the lot consolidation and subdivision plan submitted by Randy Good to consolidate and subdivide the properties at 833 and 101 Paxton Street and 917 South Front Street.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Petrowski. Mr. Knight?
Yes, project here before you, again, is a proposal to consolidate 4 individual tracks, one at 833, one at 1001 Paxton Street, 2 at 833 Paxton Street, and 1 at 917 South Front Street. You can see these all on the map here on the screen. 1000 Paxton Street is the one in the far upper left corner of your screen there. 833 is both the narrow parcel between that and the large parcel to the bottom. And then 917 South Front Street is the one lot 2B on there. And it's actually on the other side of Sycamore Street from where 833 is, and it's accessed by going underneath Sycamore Street. And the proposal is to essentially combine all these and then convert and then transfer the narrow property that exists between Paxton Creek and the railroad tracks to one, and that which is addressed as 833 Paxton Street to 1001 Paxton Street to the east. And you can kind of see that in the colored image in the upper right-hand corner there. So they'll create one total parcel out of that, and then the other parcel will be lot 2 there. The remaining 833 and 917 South Front Street. There will be no changes to the site as of yet, but what this will do is I believe it will allow the applicants to more easily sell the property at 1001 Paxton Street, because it will thereby have a strip of parking that will be associated with that building, which the building does extend out over Paxton Creek as well to the other side. The Planning Bureau and the Planning Commission both recommended approval of the project with the following conditions. The applicant will reconstruct the sidewalks along 833 and 1000 Paxton Street to bring them into conformance with the property maintenance code and ADA regulations, including the removal of the curb cut directly in front of the building at 1001 Paxton Street, which will ensure an accessible and safe connection for pedestrians to and from future Paxton Creek Greenway. And then the applicant will work with the city on establishing a 50-foot easement along the property to be addressed as 1001 Paxton Street, which will be a key link in a future Paxton Creek Greenway. The 50-foot easement is pretty standard for other easements that have been granted for properties along Paxton Creek in the past. So that's why we've asked for that. And the applicant is in agreement with both of those aspects. The Planning Bureau and the Planning Commission recommended that it be approved for the following reasons. The lot consolidation and subdivision proposal will not have an appreciable effect on the subject properties or surrounding properties, although it appears it will make an eventual sale and reuse of 1001 Paxton Street more likely, which would have a positive economic impact for the city. And the Planning Bureau's conditions of approval, if adopted by City Council, will ensure that the project results in improved pedestrian infrastructure, which will benefit the public and will enable the eventual completion of the proposed Paxton Creek Greenway. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Richard Castranio, who's the, I believe, legal consultant for the applicant.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Sorry, he's the engineering consultant.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Knight.
Yes, thank you. It's Rick Castranio with Alpha Consulting Engineers. And just wanted to say the staff had, the report was very detailed, and our goal was just to create a 2.7 acre tract of land that can be sold, and then that building will be redeveloped at some sort. Those plans will come back before the city to hash out how they want that to look. So I can answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, so just reviewing. Do have a few questions, but I'll actually let my colleagues go ahead as I formulate them. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Not at the present time, Mr. Mattson, but I will be asking questions when they come back before us because they're consolidating 3 or 4 property acres. And so I just want to know what the usage, what they have in mind, if they want to sell it or they're looking at doing something, because this is classified as industrial area. So are they looking to build something or?
Okay.
Sell the property just to combine them to sell them?
Okay. Well, I know that wasn't a formal question quite yet. Does the applicant want to touch or?
Yeah, at this point, we're still marketing. The realtor's still looking at possible ideas and for redevelopment of the parcel. And of course, they'll work with city staff and council and the planning bureau when they get around to that point.
Because as I stated, it is zoned industrial, and I can see in that particular area, there are some businesses at this present time. So I was wondering if you're looking at constructing a business along that area and coming back before council and coming back before the planning and the zoning to ask for an exception to do that. That's all.
I'm not aware of that at this time.
Okay.
But for Councilman Mattson, even though this is just a subdivision of land, one of the comments from the staff was that we have to rebuild the sidewalk in front of 1001 and 833. And Pensy Supply has agreed to do that, and we're going to get that done as soon as we're allowed to build again, and work with the city and get a list of minority-owned contractors to do the work.
Okay, that's great. And I'm sure you've heard from the other applicants, any and all opportunities that we can do to help that local participation, sending out the information through our network so they have an opportunity to bid is very much appreciated.
Right, and again, they're committed to whatever, if there's a minority-owned contractor list the city has to just use who's on that list.
Very good. Very good. Is there any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, we will put resolution 24 on our next legislative session for consideration of a vote. Thank you. And then I guess that concludes the business for the Community and Economic Development Committee, and I will pass it along to President Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Moving on with our committee business, I now will turn it over to Budget and Finance Committee, our committee chair, Mr. Allett.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Kirk, can you go ahead and read resolution 22 into record?
Yeah, resolution 22 of 2020 is a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to enter into an intergovernmental cooperation agreement with the Pennsylvania Department of Health for the purpose of receiving up to $540,250 to fund lead hazard control activities within the city of Harrisburg.
Great, thank you. And who on behalf of the city will be leading a summary discussion around this resolution?
This is Mark Woolley. I have Lily Williams on the phone, and she's our interim director of DBHD, and I'll have her take it.
Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead, Lily.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Right now, the state-led program is offering 25 units. We have been awarded 25 units, and they have given us an additional 11 units, totaling 36 units in a 3.5-year span. We are, for the 11 additional units, they are giving a grant of $159,000. For the 25 units, they're giving us $381,250, which totals up to the $540,000 and $250. Right now, the grant goes to February 28th, 2023. Again, it is a 3.5-year grant.
Great. So in terms of looking at the overall spread, we are spreading this budgetarily over the course of the 3 years, I'm assuming, correct?
Correct.
And then on top of that, are we increasing the amount of units that we're servicing as a result of this, or is this just helping to supplement our existing budget for these, the servicing of these units so far?
For the 11, it is an extension for the 11 from last year. The 25 are brand new.
Okay. And this, is there any other stipulations as part of the grant in terms of usage or things that we need to be aware of as not to jeopardize the funding over the course of the 3 years?
No, not that I'm aware of at this time.
Okay, those are all the initial questions I have. I can open it up to my colleagues on council, starting with President Williams. Do you have any specific questions on this?
Thank you, Mr. Allett. So we're looking at doing 36 homes. Do you think that you will have the time limit of 3.5 years to do that, to complete that?
Oh, absolutely. My team has been dedicated to, with us being off with the pandemic, I have my team with the lead team doing research, sending application, doing outreach to the Harrisburg community. I feel that I have I want to say I believe that they can do it. I know they can do it. They work very well under pressure, and we are a very good team.
Okay. How many homes did you do within the last 2 years? Do you have a statistical number for that?
For the state-led program, it was 36 for the 3.5 years prior. For the grant just started in March 1st of 2020. So before then, it was 36 units as well.
Okay. Thank you. That was great. Exceptional work. Thank you.
Thank you.
How do you propose to reach all the residents of City Harrisburg? Because I know some are reluctant to speaking with anyone that's coming to their home. So how do you propose to reach out to them to make them aware of this program? I know there's been flyers sent out before, So how do you propose to do this?
Yes, we have flyers sent out. We also have billboards that's gonna, well, we did, they were gonna have billboards. We will put it back up. We will have the billboards go back up. Not go back up, but they were supposed to go up. And then with the pandemic, we had to stop things. So we are gonna have billboards up. We also are going to have more workshops for the lead program, the state lead program. We also have went to the school board administration. We let them know about the program. They were very interested. We also went to the housing authority. We also sent them information and let them also know about the program to send out to landlords and different schools as well.
Okay. Do you think the criteria for the lead program prohibits a lot of our residents from utilizing this particular grant? Because, and I'm talking about, you know, when you request different information from them, i.e. their credit or any documents that they need, financial documents that they need to provide. I find that prohibits a lot of our residents from entering into this program, although it's greatly needed because most of their homes are homes that have been built in the 1930s or 1940s.
Absolutely. I don't, right now we are not doing any credit checks. What we ask for is utility bills. They have to be up to date on their refuse bills. We ask for anyone, if they have any children under the age of 6. So we are trying to help out instead of hindering them and putting blocks up. We're trying to help them and giving them different avenues to take if they do come up with a roadblock. We give them different payment plans for refuse. We've had some issues like that come up. So what we do is we contact Public Works and they work with them, set up payment arrangements. But that's some of the roadblocks we have been happening in the past.
Okay. Are we opening this program up to the senior citizens as well?
Absolutely, yes. Because sometimes you have grandparents that raise their grandchildren.
Exactly.
And we don't want to say, oh, just because they're not your child versus your grandchild, you can't come to the program. Absolutely not. If you have a grandchild and you're raising them and they're under the age of 6, or even spend the night, come over 50% of the time, you are eligible for the program.
Well, thank you, Lillian.
You're welcome.
That's all the questions I have, Mr. Allen.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have particular questions? Maybe just raise your hand. Oh, sorry, switch the view there. Sorry, any questions? I didn't see anyone's hand. Anything right now? All right, hearing no questions, I recommend this resolution get moved to our next legislative session vote on Tuesday. And that concludes the Budget and Finance Committee business meeting for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Petrosky, is there any public comment at this time?
There were no public comments, but I just wanted to note for the record that the next legislative session will be 4/28 next Tuesday, the 28th at 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else, council members? That will conclude our committee business for the work session of Tuesday, April 21st, 2020. At this time, I'm asking for an adjournment. Meeting is officially adjourned.
Second.
Thank you.